Hi, and welcome to What's the Tea in L&E. And I'm here today with Liz Heddleston, who is a principal in our firm, and she is the chair of our healthcare industry team. Liz, I wanted to have you on today because I frequently get calls from clients who they're trying to work with a disability accommodation with an employee, or something happens and the employee says, hey, no, you can't share that information because of HIPAA. HIPAA is a protection for me. What is HIPAA?
Good question. Yeah, so HIPAA is a federal law that protects the privacy and security of patient information. But to be covered under HIPAA, you have to be a covered entity or a business associate. So covered entities, for example, are healthcare providers like medical practices, hospitals, health plans are also a type of covered entity. And then business associates are those vendors that provide services on behalf of covered entities to support them.
So basically, really HIPAA only applies to healthcare businesses or institutions and maybe a provider. So if in the context of an employment situation, if you're an employer and you're not a healthcare institution, an employee is saying, hey, HIPAA covers this, is that just blatantly wrong?
Yeah, there's a lot of medical information that it just isn't covered by HIPAA. So health information about employees held by an employer in an employment context is not covered by HIPAA. There's a specific exemption under HIPAA that basically says that is not PHI, that's not protected health information, and it's not covered.
So even, what about a healthcare institution that employs employees, right? Like, so a healthcare institution that has a registered nurse, if the nurse wanted to discuss a request for an accommodation or treatment related to a disability, would HIPAA cover that?
Again, HIPAA would not cover the health information in that employment context. But if that provider then got their own healthcare treatment at that healthcare entity, that information, their patient record related to that, would be covered by HIPAA.
Okay, I've got to follow up on this. So Liz, I had a situation that you actually helped me through, and I feel like we should talk about this, where it was a healthcare institution. So the employer was a healthcare practice of some sort. And they had a husband and wife situation that were going through a nasty divorce.
Yes.
And the wife was an employee at the practice and reviewed her husband's medical records. He was only a patient at the practice, reviewed the psychology reports and some other medical records, I think to be able to use them in the divorce proceedings. Did we have a HIPAA violation there?
Yes, that's definitely a HIPAA violation. That's something we commonly see where employees look at patient data outside of the scope of their job. So you have a HIPAA issue that leads to certain compliance obligations, and then obviously the discipline and the HR employment side of that piece as well.
Yeah, the intersection of the employment. I mean, and in that case, so what would you do, right? So even though the employee was given access to those medical records by nature of her job duties and being a nurse and having access to patient records, what was the obligation on behalf of an employer to respond to something like that?
Yeah, so that they have to look at the access. They can pull the audit logs of the EHR and see what was accessed inappropriately out of the scope of their job duties. And then they have obligations, depending on the situation, to notify the individual whose information was accessed inappropriately. You also have to let regulators know, HHS, OCR, about a HIPAA breach. So once you know about it, you do have to look into it and determine what you have to do under HIPAA to address it.
And I do remember this only made for a much nastier divorce.
I believe that.
So comply with HIPAA, comply with your ADA obligations as well, which also have confidentiality protections for employees when you're discussing disabilities and requests for accommodation in the workplace. Liz, thanks so much for joining us. Until next time.